Tales Under a Broken Sky, Episode 19. The Devils in the d20. You don't know me, but if you're listening to this, I have something important to tell you, and I need you to listen closely. Whether you choose to or not, that's entirely up to you. But if you don't, I can't help you. Look, I can't guarantee that I can help, even if you do. I couldn't help myself in the end. I thought I could get away. I thought I had outsmarted it. But I was wrong. I never stood a chance. It just let me believe that I could. Look, I know right now you're probably thinking I'm crazy. Just give me a chance to explain. Hear me out. If you still don't believe me by the end, you can go on your way, live your life, however long that may be. But please, just give me a chance. Look, I don't know how long I have. Nothing's right here. Everything, and I mean everything, is a mess. I tried to run. I tried to get out. But all the doors are blocked. The elevators are gone. Just gone. I've been here 2 nights, so I know my way around well enough. The lifts used to be right over there, right there, between the fake houseplant and that cheap commercial print of a fishing boat. Now there's just a blank wall where the elevator doors used to be. Look, if you've been around a while, you've probably heard the rumours. You know the ones. The whispers about a late night game at the convention, not on the schedule. You've probably heard about them from a friend of a friend of a friend, someone you haven't seen in a long time, someone that used to be a perennial Gore. You could walk into any games room at any convention and they'd be there, laughing away as if they knew every role player and LARPer in the country on a first name basis. You could hand them a board game, any board game, and they would already know the rules. You know the type. Except you haven't seen them recently. It's been a while now, actually, if you think about it. Look, it said these games are special, not your run-of-the-mill dungeon crawl. It said that when you join this game, you're handed a character sheet, except it's not a pre-gen, or a random roll, or a carefully crafted persona. It's you. It's you, distilled down to your very essence. They say that when you read it, when you scan through your stats and perks and weaknesses, you are laid bare, that your whole life suddenly makes sense. Every successful interview, every failed flirtation, every mediocre exam, every lingering illness, every skill or failing you have, it's all there, codified in that cold, hard logic of modifiers and saving throws. Look, they say that the devil himself runs these games, wagering for your soul with each roll of the dice. Look, I didn't believe the stories. It was just an urban legend, a thing the organising committee spread to make things a little more mysterious, a little more interesting, generate some interest in the after-hours activities, you know. I was wrong. I was late arriving down to the evening session. Even still, the venue was surprisingly quiet. Initially, I didn't think much of it. People were probably cloistered away in the RPG rooms. The evening games were all well underway. I had missed the start of my own by a good 30 minutes. But I had at least expected to see a few people propping up the bar. Having missed out on a night of role-playing, I headed towards the board game room, hoping to find a group looking for a last-minute player. Worst case scenario, I sat in on a game and talked shit with some of the lads. It took longer than I expected to find the room. The corridor connecting the main hall to the breakout room seemed to go on forever, stretching out as I walked, toying with my sense of perspective. I could see the end, but I never seemed to get any closer. Unnerved by the experience, I was on the verge of turning back when I finally spotted the sign for the game room. Glad just to find what I was looking for, I didn't pay attention to the dead silence or to the way the shadows seemed to linger in the corners. I pushed open the door, expecting to be enveloped by the sounds of tumbling dice and good-natured shenanigans. But the room was empty. Unfinished games littered the tables, cards and counters tossed haphazardly across the boards. I should have left then and there, cut my losses, and headed back to my hotel room, cozied up with the quarter bottle of whiskey still sitting on the dresser, and continued my Farscape rewatch. I should have, but I'm not sure that was ever an option. I'm not sure if he would have allowed me to get away. I don't think I'm even in the hotel anymore. It looks the same. Same carpet, same paint, same detailing, same numbers on the doors. But everything is off. The angles are all wrong, and the shadows don't quite match with the lighting. It's like everything is just for show. The uncanny valley writ large across the face of reality. That's when I met him. I was leaving the room, and he was just there. A too large grin stretched across his face. He invited me to his game, just across the hall. He was short a player, was worried all his careful planning would go to waste, especially at the late hour. I should have run. I should have listened to my gut. But before I could protest, he was leading me across the corridor and into one of the other rooms. There were 4 players inside already, sitting in silence, staring blankly down at their character sheets. He gestured for me to sit. There was 1 empty seat left at the table, and I reluctantly took it. I glanced at the character sheet, lying ready on the table for me. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know. I'd heard the stories, the rumours. I'm just like you right now. I didn't believe them. But that didn't stop the sense of dread I felt sitting at that table. The man grinned across at me, that dreadful smile stretching his face, contorting his features. I'm telling you now, I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help myself. We all tell ourselves that we're different, that we would never be that person at the scene of an accident, taking a video on our phone instead of helping. But that's just what this was like. I could not look. I could not see. I was a bystander, looking on in morbid curiosity as my eyes slowly moved down to the page lying on the table before me. Have you ever learned something about yourself that when you look back on your life puts everything into perspective? That takes everything you ever thought you knew and turns it on its head. That explains everything about you more clearly, more concisely than you ever could yourself. In that moment, as my eyes flitted across the stat line, I saw my entire life laid bare before me. every success, every failure, every little bit of bad luck. All the opportunities I missed just because I turned left instead of right on my way to lunch. All the times I succeeded at something because someone else woke up 5 minutes too late. How would you feel if suddenly you realised that you got that job not because you were good at it, but because someone else failed their constitution roll and ended up sick in bed with the flu? Or you missed out on meeting your soulmate by mere seconds because you failed a dexterity check, spilled your coffee, and were delayed leaving the house by a few paltry minutes. How would you feel if you learned that everything in your life hinged on the roll of a die? That no matter how high your charisma bonus, there's still a chance you might try to joke with your boss about sleeping with their wife, or that thing you thought you were really good at was really just a lucky streak. All you were doing was rolling natural 20 after natural 20. Until you didn't. I could see it all plain as day, written in red ink across that accursed piece of paper. I could see it in the eyes of the other players, the torment that comes with realising that no, you don't really have control over anything in your life. The man's grin grew wider as he saw me come to that realisation, wider than his face, wider than it seemed possible. So we played. I was frantic, desperate to find some way out, to find some hidden synergy I could use to cheese the game. I rolled as little as possible, picked my moments, weighed up the difficulty modifiers, skewed the odds in my favour as much as I could. The other players rolled dice listlessly, repeating the same actions over and over and getting nowhere. It was like entering that forest or that cave, you know, the one in those old text-based RPGs, and not being able to figure out the correct combination of commands. Instead, you keep arriving back at that same old tree stump or pile of rocks. And no matter how many times you try, you just can't find a way forward. For all I knew, they were playing as hard as I was, because when it came down to it, I was having no better luck. Maybe I looked as dead-eyed to them as they looked to me. All the while, the man watched and narrated the scenario, that smile growing wider and wider, the face behind it becoming more and more twisted. One of the other players rolled a dice and flopped back into their seat, staring in resignation at the result. Double one. The devil's eyes. Those words boomed in my head. I'd never heard it called that before, and the man across the table from us hadn't said anything. That smile of his just kept growing wider. Reality seemed to warp around that yawning abyss of a mouth, wrapping back around on itself like light spiralling towards a black hole. For the first time, I saw emotion in the other player's eyes. Terror, pure, unadulterated, blood-curdling terror. The player opened their mouth in a silent scream, an infinite absence of sound, so profound that I could feel it, I could hear it vibrating in my chest. A chorus of violent shrieks and wails rushed in to fill that void, driving spikes of pain into my brain. There was a deep rumbling sound, and the ground beneath us vibrated in response. The floor beneath the unfortunate player collapsed inwards. Bloodied hands and flayed arms reached up from below, clawing and clutching at him as he fought to get away. But they had him. Broken fingernails tore his skin as they pulled, puncturing his legs and arms, lodging in his bones. His silent screams continued as he was dragged into that inevitable, infernal chasm. All eyes on that poor damned soul, I took my chance and fled the room. His hellish laughter chased me. Look, I don't have much time. There's no way out. No fate points to burn, no last-minute ex machina to save the party. I can hear him getting close. That terrible laughter echoing in my mind. I can hear his smile. Oh God, he's right around the corner. Look, if you're listening to this, it's too late for me. It might not be too late for you. Whatever you do, don't dice with the devil. No, get away from me, no! Welcome, folks, to episode 19 of Tales Under a Broken Sky. I am your host, Keith, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I'm releasing this week's podcast a little sooner than usual, the result of a double whammy, so to speak. Halloween is less than a week away now, and for the first time in a few years, I have headed off to a gaming convention for the weekend to catch up with some friends. I missed the boat for a proper Halloween episode last year. I was just getting the podcast up and running, and I was still getting to grips with recording and editing such long pieces of audio. This year I wanted to make things different and get in an additional episode for the spooky season, as folks nowadays like to call it. Halloween is probably my favourite holiday of the year, although not for most of the modern reasons. Samhain, All Souls, Dia de los Muertos, Feked, amongst a myriad of similar festivals that appear in cultures across the world, all serve as reminders both of our mortality and of the loved ones we have lost along the way. Being Irish, Samhain has always been of particular interest to me, the night when the barriers between the physical and spiritual world are at their weakest. It was an endless source of fascination for me as I was growing up. And while I'm not particularly religious, autumn, in and of itself as a season, lends itself almost perfectly to this kind of introspection and remembrance. It is in many ways the death of the year, the end of the lush greens of summer, and the start of the cold, barren winter months. For me, autumn, and Samhain as a specific day, is an annual reminder of the cycle of death and rebirth. Whether or not your belief system subscribes to some kind of reincarnation, the living die, decay, and return to the earth, only to nourish future life. Life, the earth, the solar system, the galaxy, they are all part of this cycle. Everything is the product of generations of dying stars. I find it funny, in a kind of cosmic ha-ha way, that we as a species attribute so much awe and wonder to the pantheons of gods we worship, when in essence, all they really are is a product of our efforts to understand the universe, which, in its full scale, is grander and more incomprehensible than any of the gods we worship. For me, this time of year is a reminder that as small and as insignificant as we are on a cosmic scale, we are still part of that cycle. We are part of the universe. We are here, and that alone, given the odds, is the greatest miracle. Now, moving on from the heavy philosophizing, there is no trailer at the end of this week's episode either. As is probably evident from the title, the next episode is a bit of a milestone, episode 20. I'm going to break the mould a bit and leave off storytelling next week. Instead, I'm doing a bit of an audio essay on the role of fantasy, horror, and science fiction in culture and society. It's something I've been playing around with in my head for a while now, so I'm looking forward to getting my thoughts down on paper and recorded. These genres have had a huge impact on me and my life in ways that might not be evident right off the bat, So I'm looking forward to digging into these in a bit more depth and getting a bit analytical. Until next time. Thank you for listening to episode 19 of Tales Under a Broken Sky. I hope you enjoyed this week's production as much as I enjoyed writing and recording it. If you did enjoy it, please consider subscribing to the podcast on your platform of choice and leaving a rating and/or review. Thank you again for your time.